welcome to the Almost 30 podcast. Hi, everybody. It's Linz. I am introducing the episode today with Dr. Mark Hyman. Dr. Mark Hyman and I sat down in New York City. I was so thankful we got to have this conversation in person. There's just something about connecting in front of one another, feet away. You know what I mean? So I'm so excited. If you have not heard of Dr. Mark Hyman, honestly, I'm surprised. He is just one of the leaders in health and wellness and at the forefront of really providing information and support to live a truly vibrant life. You know, all of us talk about we want to live forever. How do we live longer? But are we living longer and also healthy and enjoying our lives at the same time? So Dr. Mark Hyman, he is the co-founder of Function Health, which I want to talk about in a moment because I recently did an extensive blood panel with them. He's also the senior advisor of the Cleveland Clinic Center for Functional Medicine, the board president for clinical affairs for the Institute of Functional Medicine, and the founder and medical director of the Ultra Wellness Center in Lenox, Massachusetts. He directs a team of physicians, nutritionists, and nurses who really utilize the comprehensive life-changing approach to health involving diet and lifestyle. It has changed thousands of people's lives, this integrative approach. And I'm so thankful we get to have these types of conversation. Yes, there is room for Western and Eastern medicine when we take care of people and provide them information and support to just living really, really well. So in this conversation, we talk about biological age, your true biological age, and what you can do to basically decrease your biological age, lifestyle changes, nutrition changes, some that I think will really surprise you, to be honest. I recently did the Function Health really, really extensive blood panel, and my biological age, I'm sorry, I have to brag for a moment. And this is going to be something that I probably chip away at and say, I want to be like 10 years younger than that. My biological age is 25. So I am 37. My biological age is 25. So that's like 12 years younger than I truly am. I'm surprised and not surprised. I do feel like I have an intense focus on my health and well-being, and I make lifestyle changes based on how I'm feeling and very in tune with my body. But recently, I became a new mom. I feel like I'm not at my absolute best. So the fact that that's my biological age at this point, I'm excited to improve that even more. We also talk about how to tune into the right diet for our bodies. We are like bombarded with so much information about diet and exercise and what to take and all this stuff. How do we tune in and get the information that our bodies are giving us so that we can make decisions for our bodies? I think it's easy to be like, well, let me try magnesium because everyone's trying magnesium and maybe you don't need all that magnesium. So that was really interesting. We also talk about inflammation. This is kind of like a silent killer, a silent, just disturber of the everyday for people. So we talk about the most common causes of inflammation and how we can make our lifestyle more anti-inflammatory and why it matters. What does inflammation actually do to the body, actually do in terms of aging? He also had some really interesting thoughts on detoxing, fasting, and other modalities that seemingly reset the body. Like what's actually happening? Is it working? Who should be doing it? Who should not be doing it? And then we talk about a lot about different nutrition choices. I ask him about a bunch of like fad diets, and we're hearing protein right now. What his thoughts are on that, and then we also talk about health span versus lifespan. So, are we actually healthy as we're living longer, not just living longer? Like who wants to be 90 and feeling like crap? Not me. So we talk about that, what that means, where in the world the health span is the highest and why. It's really, really fascinating. And then I also talked to him about some recent news, RFK coming into office, and what he feels like that means. He has worked with administrations in the past. He's also, connected to RFK in various ways. And I think you will find it fascinating and also hopeful. And he really puts into perspective what could happen in this administration. And finally, we talk about function health. I have to say, I was blown away. I am blown away thus far by my experience with function health. So basically, I did an extensive blood panel through Function Health. They make it incredibly easy through their platform. They basically walked me through. They're like, okay, now we are going to make the appointment. Now it is a week away from your blood draw. Why don't you stop taking your supplements, please? And blah, blah, blah. And then it's a day before they texted me and said, hey, make sure you fast for 12 hours before your blood draw, drink only water. It was so supportive. I felt like my doctor was calling me, just being like, hey, reminder, reminder. So I did 2 separate blood draws 1 week from each other. It was really, really easy and painless. And quickly, my results were uploaded to the Function Health portal, my portal. And in a matter of like a week or two, it was over the holidays, the processing. So even that, I felt like it was really fast. And I got over 80 biomarkers checked, which is pretty incredible, including my Alzheimer's risk, including autoimmunity, heavy metals, heart health, kidney, liver, metabolic health, pancreas, stress and aging, my thyroid. Happy to say thus far, and this is where I'm at in the process, I'm waiting on some clinician notes and specific recommendations for me. But I'm happy to say that actually, it was 106 biomarkers. Wow. I'm happy to say that 96% of my biomarkers were within range. So in the green, 10 were out of range. So I'm looking forward to seeing what the clinician has to say. But what I love and what I've been digging into is they have recommendations as far as foods and supplements right now as a part of my action plan. So, just to give you an idea, my top 5 foods that I should be consuming a bit more of: mackerel, sardines, strawberries, thyme, and adzuki beans. That's right. So I'm going to talk to the clinician just about why these recommendations are such, what I can be focusing on, what supplements I can take out of my routine, what supplements I can add, different lifestyle choices. So this is a revolutionary way to take care of yourself. It is affordable and convenient. And this is something you can do every year. Every year you start with 100 plus lab tests and insights from top doctors. It's your health, y'all. It is time to own your health. All of this for $499. Pretty incredible. Dr. Hyman also shared some wild and profound stories around early detection of thousands of diseases that people have found through Function Health, people finding cancer early on and being able to catch it, treat it, and go into remission, thyroid, celiac, hyperthyroidism, strokes, PCOS. It's really, really, really important that we are catching these things early so you can monitor for early indicators of thousands of diseases through Function Health. Okay, and for our listeners, please listen up. This is really awesome. Dr. Hyman is sharing a code with us so that the first 100 people to use the code will be able to get early access to Function and skip the 300,000 person waitlist. I know. I was shocked as well. It's pretty incredible. So try Function Health before anyone else at functionhealth.com and use the code almost30. That's almost 30. The first 100 people to use the code will be able to get early access to Function and skip the 300,000 person wait list. I am so excited for you to take ownership of your health and really focus on your health span moving forward. Okay, y'all, I am excited to introduce Dr. Mark Hyman. Enjoy this conversation, and I will see you on the other side. Okay, I have a bath now, and I've been taking baths. And one of my favorite rituals I've been doing while in the bath is having a little elixir with my apothecary tinctures. This is a brand dedicated to harnessing the power of plant medicine to make everyday healing second nature for us. Plants are powerful, y'all. We cannot sleep on this. If you are someone who's experiencing like stress or low energy or poor sleep, I know you, I see you, I am you. And sometimes we just go to the quick fixes like a coffee or that second cup of coffee or a sleep aid that might not make us feel amazing in the morning. But I am here to tell you that these 100% natural plant-based formulas are so effective. Today, I want to talk about Take the Edge Off. This is inspired by white wine to calm high stress and ease tension in a moment's notice. So you can add this to like a sparkling water, or you can just slip it underneath your tongue. But I love to make it like a little mocktail type situation. And I'll bring this in the bath with me. And Take the Edge Off is just so freaking powerful. It actually sold out twice within the first year of its launch. This is a citrusy honey-like taste. It is delicious. Again, I like it in sparkling water. You can take it any time of day, but especially in moments of high stress. So sometimes bedtime with my son can be a little bit of a battle every once in a while. So in those moments, I like to just take a moment. I've gotten a little edgy. And so I'll go in the bath and I will drink this concoction. It's so freaking effective. They've done studies on this in a 1 month before and after study conducted with 42 participants. 95% of participants found Take the Edge Off helpful with dealing with feelings of anxiety. 90% of participants felt that Take the Edge Off was an effective replacement for alcoholic beverages. And 95% of participants said they would consider swapping out their go-to alcoholic beverages on a regular basis for Take the Edge Off. So this, if you are sober curious, try this out. I am so excited for you. You can go to apothecary.co. That's apothecary with a K, and get 15% off by using the code almost30 at checkout. Go to apothekary.co and get 15% off using the code almost30. That's code almost30 at checkout. Hello, babes. Okay, it's time to expand your life by listening. I know you listen to us, maybe some other podcasts, but let me tell you what has changed my life is listening to audiobooks on Audible. You can explore over 1 million audiobooks, podcasts, and exclusive Audible originals that will inspire you and motivate you, make you laugh, make you think. All you have to do is just open the app and tap into your well-being with advice and insight from leading influencers and experts and professionals. It is so easy. I am obsessed with the app because it's just not complicated. I can find exactly what I need. Honestly, they recommend the best titles for me. Like they know me by now. So really whatever your focus or interest is, there's a listen for it on Audible. You'll find titles on better health, including personal fitness, nutrition, and relaxation. Right now, I am digging into and listening to The Magic of Tiny Moments by Jared Weiss. We're actually going to have him on the podcast soon. And this is an Audible original. It's an audiobook on how to cultivate love, friendship, and community. It is a beautiful listen. I'm listening to this wherever I go. I'm really excited for you to make a positive change this year and add listening to audiobooks to your routine. There's so much opportunity when you listen to something. Just like for me, hits different. So start listening today when you sign up for a free 30-day trial at audible.com/almost30. That's audible.com/almost30. So I just came from an incredible event that you and your team put on for Function Health. And you mentioned that this is there's a window right now to really impact the state of health and healthcare in our country.
Yeah.
And, we don't get political on this show, so I'm not going in that direction. It's more so like everyone has a body.
Yeah.
Everyone has their health.
That's right.
So I guess, what is your vision?
The human body isn't red, blue, or purple.
Exactly. Exactly.
And everybody is suffering.
Yeah.
The whole country's suffering. We've got 93% of us have some degree of prediabetes. It's insane. 38% of teenage boys have prediabetes.
Wow. Why?
It's insane. Why? Because we're
Wow.
eating a diet that's
Yeah, the
complete
diet.
crap. It's ultra processed food. We eat 152 pounds of sugar and 133 pounds of flour per person per year in America. It's almost a pound a day, half a pound, three-quarters of a pound. I'm not good at math, but it's a lot. And
Wow.
that's a pharmacologic dose. It's destroying our metabolism. So we've got a metabolic crisis in this country, and it's driving everything from heart disease to cancer to diabetes to Alzheimer's to even things like depression. And we have to understand that, like, we've got to dig into this
Mhm.
seriously because we're spending more and more on healthcare. We've gone from 1.3 trillion in 2000 to 4.9 trillion last year. We're 48th in life expectancy. Every disease is on the rise. Heart disease by 50%, cancer by 100% in some areas, 60% in those under 50 increases. Seeing 1,000% increase in autism, a 400% increase in
Mm.
diabetes, 150% increase in Alzheimer's. It's just, it's allergies is 200-300%, and then medication use for each of these conditions is going up not by an equivalent amount, but by 300-400%. So we're spending more and more. We're doing more and more medication, and people are getting sicker and sicker. Like, what's wrong with this problem here?
Yeah.
And so, Function Health is really an attempt to try to shift healthcare toward understanding the body at from the root cause perspective
Mm.
and dig deep into what we now can do through really affordable lab testing that was really only accessible to the wealthy even just a few years ago. For $15,000 with labs, you get a lot to figure it out. But we offer it for $4.99, $1.37 a day, which is less than you spend on your coffee probably.
Yeah,
Now,
it
not
is.
everybody can afford $500, a lot of money, but still, most people can invest in their health. You invest now or you invest later, and I think what's really happening is that people are starting to wake up to the fact that we have to take agency over our health. That COVID was a sort of this moment where everybody was
Mm.
like called into question our medical system, how it works, the pharmaceutical industry, how we handle it. And people started to realize that, wow, we are 4% of the population versus 16% of the COVID cases and deaths. Why is that? It's because we're sick, you know. And so the science is really clear on this. 63% of all hospitalizations and deaths from COVID could have been prevented by a healthier diet. So people are like, wait a minute, I need to be in charge. And so people are using Oura rings and glucose monitors and all these cool gadgets and Apple Watches to track their health data. Whoops, fine, it's all great. But people need to go a little deeper. And before, you had to go to the doctor, you had to get your insurance to pay for it, you had to convince your doctor, I want you to check my vitamin D level, or I want to check my hormones, or I want to check blah, 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 toxin levels. And they're like, oh, you don't
Mhm.
need that. It's unnecessary. There's nothing wrong with you. You're fine. You don't have a disease. So everything's cool. But the truth is that there's so much going on under the hood for people in our society, from metabolic dysfunction that we're seeing in over 96% of our members, which is astounding to me, but it mirrors what's happening in the general population. So we see autoimmune diseases, 33% have autoimmunity. If you add in the thyroid antibodies, it's like 46% have
Mhm.
autoimmunity. That's crazy. And these are things that we shouldn't be suffering from. 67% nutritional deficiencies, and these are all things that will cause you to feel bad now, and maybe subtle ways that aren't a disease, quote unquote, a disease, but are going to be eventually a disease if you leave them untreated.
Yeah.
And so a lot of things that we find are things that people can do to themselves. So the idea is, how do you be the CEO of your own health? How do you have agency over your own body? Because
Mhm.
when you go to the doctor, they're looking for diseases. If you say, doc, hey doc, I want you to give me a program to optimize my health. They're like, I don't know. I don't have a prescription for that. And it's not because they're uh, having any malintent. It's because they're just not trained.
Sure.
And we're trained to diagnose and treat disease. That's it. And so we never took a class on creating a healthy human 101, right?
Right.
we just had to sort of diagnose and treat disease. But by the time you get a disease, it's been going on for 20, 30, 40 years. Alzheimer's, we can pick up 40 years earlier on brain scans. We're now offering soon an Alzheimer's lab test where we can do blood
Wow.
biomarkers, where you don't have to wait until you get symptoms. You can find things are starting to go wrong and then reverse those things. We now can reverse the early stage of Alzheimer's with lifestyle interventions. This is not my opinion. This is proven by
Yeah.
people like Richard Isaacson, who's at Cornell. Um, and we're seeing people with this metabolic problems that can be reversed. We're seeing people with heavy metals that they didn't know they had, or with nutritional
Mhm.
deficiencies, and these things are really things that people can fix. Cancer, I mean, we before, you had to go get a pap test, a mammogram, a colonoscopy. These are like invasive tests, prostate exam, not a fun
Mhm.
stuff. And now, through a liquid biopsy, which is essentially a blood test, we can find over 50 different cancers in your blood, 75% sensitive, meaning it'll pick the cancers up 75% of the time if you have something. False positive is less than 0.5%, which is way better than any other test, meaning it's going to show up positive. It's not really positive. It will show this positive. So you got to kind of scared for nothing, but that's very low. But mammograms are much worse, like Pap tests are much worse. So there's so much noise when you go get a regular screening test. So we're finding people with, cancer that they didn't know they had when they're very young. And so this is really revolutionary where, you should go to your doctor and say, I want this test, or you can't afford it, or the insurance is going to pay for it, or I don't know anything about how to interpret it, so I'm not going to order it. It's like, so this is really a way for people to kind of be empowered with their own health.
And I think with something, a service like this, a platform like this, really like a movement is there's some reprogramming in the people that I think is happening where taking ownership of your own health feels a little bit foreign and a little overwhelming.
Yeah.
But, I think to your point, your content that you've been putting out for a very long time, it is like a day by day, hour by hour choice that can become your normal.
That's right. It's your little choices. But the beautiful thing about function is not just here's your data, like good luck. It's really informed by massive amounts of scientific evidence. So, for example, I'm one doctor. If I wanted to read the 10 million scientific papers that have been published and are available, I could never do that in my lifetime. Right. But a computer can do that in 5 minutes.
Yeah, the beauty of AI is really apparent.
So we can use interpretive science to help guide our recommendations. We use knowledge experts who help sort of inform the information within the platform. And then we use your data that's personalized to help customize and create a personalized, unique set of recommendations that are things you can do yourself. Okay, well, you have high insulin and high A1C. Well, you should do a diet that is a low glycemic diet that's higher in good fats. It's got more fiber. You cut out these foods, you add these foods. Here's the supplements that might be helpful. You might need extra berberine, or you might need lipoic acid, or you might need different things that work to help with your metabolic health. And then, if you're not getting things under control, well, then you need to go see an endocrinologist. Maybe you need to be on medication, or maybe not if you do what we tell you. Right. Here's how to exercise, here's how to manage stress, here's how you manage sleep. And we provide deep guidance on how to do that that's evidence-based. And so it really provides people with a robust, personalized roadmap for their health, where they are and where they're headed predictively, and how to reverse that by adopting some simple behavior changes. And ultimately, I think we're going to have models where we help people do this together in cohorts. And like, we just started. We're in like, we're basically like in, 3-month-old baby.
Sure.
I barely can walk. I barely can, smile.
But the trajectory and the team behind it is really
I mean, we've done so much in a year. Since April of 23, when we launched, we now have 100,000 members.
That's pretty
400,000 people on the waiting list.
Yeah.
We've had probably 20 million biomarkers we've measured. Wow. We have so much information about our cohorts, and we're constantly in beta. I mean, Gmail was in beta for 4 years. We're still in beta and trying to build the system that we're growing. Sure. But we're right now, even as it is, it's heads and shoulders above anything else out there that you can get to understand what's going on with your biology and take action that's meaningful, that will impact how you feel now. Meaning, if you're tired, I just had a friend who showed me her results, and I was like, you have antibodies to your thyroid. Your thyroid's kind of high normally, your TSH. Things would not be checked by your regular doctor. You have vitamin D deficiency, you're iron deficient. This is why you feel like crap. Yeah. This is how to fix it. Super easy. At this event we were at, someone showed me their labs, and I'm like, you have autoimmune issues, you're pre-diabetic, you have high levels of homocysteine, which is a measure of folate and B12 deficiency that's linked to cancer and heart disease and mood issues. And I said, here's the simple things you can do to fix it. It's quite amazing.
It is really,
so
incredible.
People find these things that maybe they didn't know they're not being checked for. So your doctor's not checking for autoimmunity.
You mentioned at the event, one of the things that people don't check for often is insulin.
Insulin,
it's really important. Can we talk about that?
Sure. Well, I said, 93% of people are metabolically healthy. What does that actually mean? Yeah. So when you eat starch and sugar, from an evolutionary perspective, we're designed to store that extra calories as fat. It's a protective mechanism. So if you're a bear, at the beginning of the season, you're eating salmon and protein and fat. And then at the end of the season, in the summer, you're eating berries, which is sugar, and they gain 500 pounds. They become diabetic, hypertensive, and then
Do they really? Like, do bears?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and then
Wow.
they go to sleep, and
Wow.
they burn it off all winter.
Wow.
Right? We just keep eating all winter.
Yeah.
And so
Intense.
what happens is when you're eating, the average Paleolithic human hunter-gatherer had maybe 22 teaspoons of sugar a year if they found some honey or some berries. We eat 22 teaspoons a day as adults and 34 as children. And it's a pharmacologic dose of sugar
Mm.
that our biology has never adapted to. And so this is why we see the accumulation of belly fat. And you walk around America, you go to the airport, you go to a mall, you go down the street. I mean, there are pockets of health in America. New York being, I have to walk everywhere, so people have more exercise.
Right.
But, it's astounding, and you try to find someone who's not overweight. It's hard,
It's hard.
and that belly fat is driving all these downstream problems because the fat is hungry fat, so it becomes a fat that makes you eat more because your body is basically dumping all the calories from your blood into the fat cells. So your body thinks I'm starving, even though there's plenty of fuel around.
Okay.
It locks the fat in there. So once it gets in, it can't get out. And 2 and 3, your metabolism slows down. So you're hungrier, your metabolism slows down, the fat gets locked in the fat cells, and it's just a vicious cycle. And this is why people gain. And the early indicator of the problem is insulin. So the first thing that happens when you start to eat too many sugars and carbohydrates, refined carbohydrates, because broccoli is a carbohydrate, that's fine to eat. It starts to raise your insulin level. Insulin level is the first thing to go up, not your blood sugar. So by the time your blood sugar is up on a test, it's 100, which is what the reference range is. It probably should be 85. But when you're at 100, then you're diagnosed as prediabetes. But your insulin is going to go up way before that. And less than 1% of all tests that doctors do, include insulin. It's probably the most important test to look at your metabolic health. And what would be even better is it's a newer test that we're going to be offering, which is called an insulin resistance score, which is measuring C-peptide, which is a precursor of insulin, plus insulin using a technology called mass spectrometry, which is blah, 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 lab testing lingo. But essentially, it's a extremely accurate way to measure these two molecules.
Wow.
And then they do a ratio, and they can tell based on this ratio that whether you're insulin resistant or not. And then you can follow it over time after you do certain interventions, like change my diet, I exercise, I sleep better, whatever, take these supplements, and then you can see a change. And it's as accurate as the most sophisticated laboratory research technology for measuring your insulin resistance, which is called the euglycemic clamp test, which you don't want to do. It's not fun. So, and then you can do a glucose tolerance test with insulin, but then you have to drink like 2 Coca-Colas basically and drink all this sugar and then see what happens. That's what we did for years. But now with this new test we're going to be offering, it's kind of amazing. So, when I say 93% of Americans are metabolically healthy, that's what I'm talking about. And that's causing this sort of acceleration of disease. And we treat all the diseases as separate, but the truth is the body has some root causes. And one of the biggest ones is insulin resistance.
You've been practicing for quite a long time.
Too long.
And, I guess you've seen so many patients, you've seen so many lab results. You've really dug in. Did you see kind of like was there a turning point in people's health? Because I guess, when we see videos from the 1950s and 60s, we see people on the beach and they're pretty overall healthy. I guess
it's astounding. Okay, so I graduated medical school in 1987.
Yeah.
When I graduated medical school, there was not a single state with an obesity rate over 15%.
Wow.
Okay. Now there's not a state under 30%, and most are over 40%. And the average rate of obesity in America is 42%. I think Colorado is kind of a little bit less there, but everywhere else. And if you look at the map of America, it's the red states that are the most affected. It's the states in the South, the Midwest, that have the highest prevalence of metabolic dysfunction, the highest prevalence of diabetes, the highest rates of diabetes. 14 out of the 15 states with the highest diabetes mortality rate are red states. And it's unfortunate. And I'm actually, we're doing this like a couple of days after the election, and, President Trump, is a polarizing figure, but he's the first presidential candidate that's ever talked about addressing this chronic disease epidemic. Even before Bobby Kennedy kind of joined camps with him, he released a video a year ago. And I was like, what is this? I've never heard this on a presidential campaign. Who's telling him to do this? And I was like, wow, like this is a turning point where we kind of just can't ignore this problem anymore.
I agree. Yeah, it's like an exciting thing that it's being, looked at and talked about, and hopefully, I guess, how do you see what would need to change on like that national level from your perspective?
What are the policy initiatives that if I were king, and what would I do?
Yeah.
I'll tell you. You might want to know?
Yeah, I do.
It's not some of these are not easy to implement.
Yeah.
They're conceptually straightforward. If there was the political will to do it, they would be easy to do. But there's so much pushback from industry against it that it's going to be hard. Like
food industry, pharmaceutical,
So what would be my wish list? One, I would create a National Institute of Nutrition at the NIH to study the link between chronic disease and food, and really dig into how food is medicine, how to reverse chronic disease with food. Mm-hmm. Second, I would have the NIH say to every single academic institution and medical school, which they fund with research grant dollars, that we're not giving you one penny unless you implement a robust nutrition curriculum in medical school.
Yeah, because that's not happening right now.
No. Yeah. I mean, my daughter's in fourth year medical school, learned nothing about
No way.
Nothing, zero. Oh, Dad, I learned about nutrition. What did you learn? Oh, I learned about amino acids and fatty acids and sugars. And well, what are you going to tell your patient for lunch?
Wow.
Like, great, you learned amino acids. Wonderful. But like, that's not nutrition. And then at the FDA, I would try to match our guidelines around food additives to that of the Europeans, which are much more stringent and have determined that many of the things that we add in our food are not safe. And in fact, they're not allowed. You've heard of this Kellogg's, uproar. I mean, I've been involved in that. And, it's crazy that Fruit Loops have all these toxins in the food in America for kids, but they don't have it in Canada or Europe. Same product. And it goes, whether it's macaroni cheese or cereal, that needs to stop. Yes. Second, I would have clear front of package labeling. It gives people the servings of fruits, vegetables, nuts, seeds, healthy fats, whole grains, and beans. And then I would, and then I would also put on the front of package labeling a clear warning label that is, determined by the quality of the food and the processing of the food, so that people have an understanding what they're eating. So you can kind of quickly tell, because right now, if you look at a nutrition label and ingredient list, unless you're like a PhD in nutrition, what the hell does it mean? Yes. Grandma this, like, does anybody know that, 1 teaspoon of sugar is 4 grams? And that if you see 28 grams or whatever, or,
they're not doing the math.
See 40 grams of sugar, it's 10 teaspoons of sugar. Nobody knows that, right? On purpose. Right. It's not an accident. If you saw the package and said 12 teaspoons of sugar on the package, you probably wouldn't buy it. But we don't do that.
They put toucan Sam and they're like,
that's right. So that would be straightforward. Then in terms of the HHS policies, which is the Health and Human Services, I would immediately implement reimbursement for nutrition services in Medicare, which would also invest in lifestyle change programs. So they would be reimbursing for things that work. And maybe we would also do more research and Medicare demonstration projects on these lifestyle change programs. I would pass the bill for medically tailored meals, which is now in Congress, that I've been working on, which takes people who are chronically ill with diabetes, heart failure, and provides them free food, which is designed to be food as medicine to reverse their diseases. I would also make sure that the dietary guidelines move into HHS from the USDA. Why should the agency that's governing what food is grown and basically pushing commodity crops and is sort of mandate is to do that? Mm-hmm. Why would we trust them to make guidelines about foods like sugar and so forth? So I would bring all that in, and I would have an independent scientific panel. It's not linked to industry. Right now, for example, they've ruled that ultra processed foods have no linkage to chronic disease or weight or anything like this. It's absurd. I mean, the British Medical Journal published a robust meta-analysis of all the scientific literature looking at all diseases across the spectrum, and found that ultra-processed food was causal or linked to 32 different illnesses that are the most common things that people suffer from. And yet the current dietary guidelines is not even going to comment on it in the new dietary guidelines. That needs to be fixed. So the dietary guidelines need to be fixed. We need to also have the money invested in the dietary guidelines process to review the literature, to have the National Academy of Sciences to do a revision of all the basic nutrients like the protein, fats, carbohydrates, vitamins, and minerals, so they can actually have updated guidelines that match what's optimal for humans. Not how much protein do you need to not get a deficiency disease, or how much vitamin D do not need to not get rickets. Not very much. So they need to be all revised. So that's sort of the HHS. And also, I would make sure that we, for the USDA, we completely reform the food programs and the agriculture programs. So we need to fund agriculture transition models for farmers to convert to regenerative agriculture that revitalizes rural communities, that makes farmers more money, that produces better food, that's more nutritious, that protects the environment, that reduces the need for inputs. Rick Clark from a big farmer, corn farmers, for his farm, he's in Common Ground, the movie that I was in, that was talk about regenerative agriculture. He saves $2 million a year by not having to buy the seeds and the chemicals and the fertilizers and the pesticides and the herbicides, because he's farming in a way that mimics nature, which is what regenerative farming is.
Yeah.
And it's scalable. And so it's a win-win-win. It's a triple bottom line. And then you get better soil, you get less runoff in the waterways that kills all the fish from the fertilizer, you get less pesticide contamination, glyphosate, herbicides, you don't destroy the soil, you don't release carbon, you reduce climate change. I mean, it's win-win-win across the board. And then as far as the food programs for SNAP, I would just have them mirror WIC. WIC is basically Women, Infants, and Children's program that it doesn't allow you to buy crap if you're a mother or for your baby or your kid.
Wow.
So you can't buy soda on WIC. So you basically just mirror that for the SNAP program, which we know can be modified. But again, there's so many forces pushing against it. 20% of Coca-Cola's U.S. profits come from food stamps. They're not going to like it. Okay. So we get rid of soda. We get rid of processed food as part of SNAP. It's going to be hard. And yeah, people can buy a crap if they want on their own dollars, but the government should not be funding more disease. Absolutely. And then we pay for it with Medicare, Medicaid on the back end. And then we subsidize the crops, that corn, wheat, and soy that are turned into ultra-processed food that we're then paying for with we're paying for with SNAP dollars, $125 billion a year, and then we're paying for Medicare and Medicaid, which is almost over $1 trillion. So it's the whole thing is nuts, and so that all needs to be fixed. And then school lunches need to be upgraded so that kids can actually eat healthy food, and we get rid of all the junk food in schools, like they did in Chile. We get rid of advertising to targeting children. We get rid of pharmaceutical advertising. So these are the kinds of things that I think would have huge impact downstream. I wrote a book about it years ago called Food Fix, and I have a nonprofit that tries to work on these issues, but it's incremental. But there's a moment where we can have really consequential change if there's this, it's like things, happen slowly and then they happen overnight, right?
Yeah.
So you think about, there's been a food movement for a long time, right? Think about women's rights. Think about, voting for women. Think about civil rights. Think about gay rights. These things took decades and then happen overnight.
Right.
The Berlin Wall came down in one day, right? Yeah. And the Soviet Union wasn't going away, but it did. So I think, we're in a moment where even slavery, think about slavery was so central to our economy. It was a civil war about this. Yeah. Hopefully don't have a civil war, but, economies can change. We went from horse and buggies to cars, right? Whole industries went out of business. That's okay.
Right. Right.
It's okay that we don't have 8-track tapes anymore. It's okay. If you want, maybe vinyl's coming back. I got a CD, I got a new house, and I bought a record player and bring out my own vinyl. Same. And I got some new vinyl albums. But, it's like,
but I think it's interesting. Just when I think about America and how ideally the powers that be want to be the most powerful nation in the world,
yeah.
And part of that, I'm like, don't we want a people that are in a health sense powerful,
it's a huge
but maybe not with the powers that have been, because they want to control them, but we won't go there. But it's just so interesting. I'm like, don't you want us to be so vital, so in our bodies, so just alive that we can contribute to this economy?
It's interesting. I think our educational system was set up to create factory workers. Yeah. And so it hasn't created a culture of people who think independently, who have who are taught to have critical thinking capacity. And there's some colleges that does do that, but it's not really foundational to how we evolved. And so we're just sort of automatons. And then we get, the media coming at us, and social media and advertising, and we're highly manipulated. And we think we're making our own independent choices, but we're not. 40% of the time people see an ad for drugs on TV and they go ask their doctor for it, they get that drug. So that's how the system works. Yeah. So we've kind of created a society of people who are not healthy, are not mentally curious, are not able to think critically. And part of that's because our brains have been now poisoned by the food we're eating. So we think about it now, we have a society where, 70% of military recruits are unfit to fight because they're overweight or unhealthy. We're 30th plus in math and reading in the world. We have great academic institutions, but the average American is not getting educated properly. They're not doing well in terms of thorough or productivity, the amount of chronic disease, how that affects productivity in the workplace. We're using probably a couple of $1 trillion a year globally from laws of productivity because of processed food, because it gives you brain fog and you're tired and you feel like crap. So productivity goes down. So we're affecting our global economic competitiveness. So we're losing, our national security, our global competitiveness, we're threatening our future generations. I mean, kids born today will live sicker and die younger than their parents. That's unconditionally true. Life expectancy is going down for the first time in history, even as we're learning how to extend lifespan and health span. I mean, it's kind of crazy moment.
I want to talk about lifespan versus or in correlation with health span and the mission, if I'm getting this correctly, of function is 100 healthy
100
years,
healthy years.
Which
There's
I
no
love.
reason, given the science we have today, that everybody can't live 100 healthy years. But what you have to understand is that disease doesn't just show up like that.
Yeah.
It's a slow transition from wellness to illness. And there are signals and clues all along the way. And if you pick up those signals and clues all along the way, you can stop that trend and you can reverse it. And that's the goal here. Most people spend the last 20% of their life in poor health. Their health span is, 80% of their life. Their lifespan is like 100%. You want them to be the same. And so you've got to pick up those signals early. And that's the purpose of Function Health, which is to help people identify where they are in that spectrum. Like the woman I saw today, she had lots of inflammation. She had autoimmune antibodies, sort of slightly having rheumatoid arthritis sort of antibodies. Didn't quite have rheumatoid arthritis yet, right? But she was heading there. Okay. She had prediabetes. Wow. She had stuff that was super fixable. Mm-hmm. And so by adjusting her diet or maybe some further testing we might recommend or doing some other lifestyle factors, she could actually reverse all of that.
I think, one of the chronic issues as well for a lot of demographics, but our demographic of women 25 to 35 is kind of this mental health decline. Can you talk to us about what you've seen in your work, whether nutritionally, lifestyle-wise, that we can do to just really bolster our mental health?
I mean, the joke is in medicine that neurologists pay no attention to the mind and psychiatrists pay no attention to the brain. But the brain affects how the mind works, right? And it's biological. It doesn't just stop at your neck, which is crazy. I mean, the psychiatrists don't look below the neck. What we found is that in medicine, I wrote a book about this 15 years ago called The Ultra Mind Solution, but the body affects the brain, whether it's Alzheimer's or depression or ADD or autism. And all that work that I did back then has been validated in spades, which is one, that mental health is often a metabolic dysfunction in the brain. So insulin resistance is a big factor. Sugar is a big factor. Nutritional deficiencies are a big factor. Toxins are a big factor. Hormones are a big factor. The microbiome is a big factor. And so we're not checking for all that. And with a simple, $1.37 a day test, you can get a deep dive on the things that do cause mental health issues. Omega-3 fatty acids, vitamin D, magnesium, your hormones, thyroid antibodies, heavy metals, insulin resistance, B12, folate, through sophisticated tests called methylmalonic acid and homocysteine, which are the gold standards. We can see that people have these dysfunctions, and by correcting them, they will get better. I had a friend who was a vegan. I just shared the story earlier, but he was very depressed and he didn't know why. We did function and he had exhibiting severe low levels of omega-3 fatty acids. Now, 60% of your brain is made up of these fats.
Wow.
It's critical for brain development, for function, for mood, for cognition, for prevention of dementia. And he started taking huge doses of fish oil and depression was gone. So we often kind of misappropriate meaning to mental illness. We think, it's psychological.
Right.
or it's you're stressed or whatever. And sometimes that's true. Sometimes, you have loss of a spouse, or, you have some traumatic event in your life, or you have real serious stuff happening, and that sure can affect you. But, a lot of people don't have that. It's just the normal daily stuff of life, and they don't feel good, or their mood.
Right.
I mean, mental health crisis is the biggest crisis. When you look at the cost of society, in indirect costs, because the direct costs aren't as much, but indirect costs from loss of productivity and absenteeism and loss of function in life. And if you're depressed, you're just not going to be engaged in life. It's staggering how much money that costs us, and it's staggering how much human suffering there is that's unnecessary. So part of the goal of function is to relieve unnecessary suffering through empowering people with their own health data and giving them guidance that's based on the science to help optimize their health.
Right. And I think that like it's the foundation. So, if I'm having an off day, I'm checking in, am I hydrated? Did I have, healthy meals today? How did I sleep? And this is like checking in on that in a more complex way. Cause I think when people think of mental health, they're like, well,
And he's like my therapist.
I have it in my family and I have it, I'm cursed with it, or, I
No,
don't have any friends.
no,
So,
no, no,
whatever it is,
no,
it's,
no, no, no.
so I like that kind of base level approach as well.
Yeah, you need to do a friend biopsy too. That's really important.
Yeah, I was going to talk about just kind of that.
Yeah.
You've talked about loneliness related to well-being,
Yeah.
because I think, it's really funny. Like we live in a society that, we're social beings by nature, but yet we're on social media, but we're more disconnected than ever.
Should be called asocial media or
Yeah,
anti-social
it really
media.
should be. And just there's this loneliness epidemic, I feel like, and I think there are periods of loneliness that might be purposeful and all of that. But can you talk to about what's happening within our bodies when we are not connected to other human beings?
Well, it's fascinating. I came up with this idea after reading the work of Christakis out of Harvard around the effect of our social networks on our health.
Mhm.
And then working with Paul Farmer in Haiti, who used the power of community health workers to help deal with these epidemics of TB and AIDS that were intractable in these countries by basically having neighbors helping neighbors.
Wow.
And then I realized that, based on Christakis' work, that, he did a lot of, for example, analysis around obesity. He found if you were obese, if your friends were obese, you were 170% more likely to be obese than if your family was overweight.
Wow.
So it's not your genetics that matter, it's your social group. And the truth is that chronic illness is also a social disease.
Mm.
But now we understand the science of this. We know that gene expression is tightly connected to your social relationships. So if you're in a conflicted relationship, or in a, where you're, fighting, or you're not in a good relationship, you're going to express genes that promote inflammation. But if you're in a loving, connected relationship, you're going to express genes that turn off inflammation.
How
And
cool.
by the way, mental illness is inflammation of the brain. Depression is inflammation of the brain. ADD, autism, bipolar, schizophrenia, OCD, these are inflammation of the brain.
Wow.
And treating inflammation fixes it. I mean, we know this, for example, from OCD. There's a condition called PANDAS, which is an accepted medical condition, pediatric associated autoimmune neurologic blah, blah, blah disease, right? And it's basically caused by strep.
Oh, wait.
And
Okay.
strep will cause this inflammatory response that creates this persistent effect in the brain that can cause all these neurological and psychological symptoms like OCD. And the treatment is treating the strep, or getting rid of I had a kid who had this, and we used intravenous ozone to help clear his body of the infection in the strep, and OCD went away.
Wow.
So that just doesn't mean all OCD is caused by that strep, but it's an example of how inflammation of the brain can play a role.
Wow. Yeah, I feel like that's a soundbite that people will really remember. The inflammation of the brain causing all of those different conditions. And is it different parts of the brain associated with those different conditions, or is it the whole brain?
Different people are affected based on their genetics and predispositions in different ways, but it's a general systemic brain inflammation. It's called chronic sterile inflammation. It's not like from an infection necessarily, although it can be, but it basically our inflamed diet, because the diet we eat is an inflammatory diet. Ultra processed food destroys our microbiome, which is the source of our immune system and our gut, and that causes all these systemic problems, and it also causes insulin resistance, which causes inflammation. So all that belly fat we're talking about, that's like a fire factory. It's just basically spewing out inflammation throughout your whole body.
Right.
So inflammation is central to all the chronic diseases we have, for everything from Alzheimer's to autism, from diabetes to heart disease, from depression to cancer. They're all inflammatory diseases.
When we're thinking about nutrition and
by the way, your doctor's not checking for those things.
Yeah, of
and
course.
we check for that on function.
Wow. Yeah, the connection to diet is so important. It's a very like duh thing to me, but I'm also like, we're going so fast on the day to day. We're just kind of putting things in our mouth. We're a society of convenience overall, I feel like. And so we're not thinking about those connections. But I guess, can you walk us through ideally what you would recommend? And I know everyone is different, but as far as diet goes, for an anti-inflammatory approach or diet, are we prioritizing proteins and fats?
Yeah.
Does the food pyramid kind of flip?
Yeah. I mean, I've written so many books. I wrote Food, What the Heck Should I Eat? The Peak Diet. I mean, my new book, Young Forever, all lays out what that means and what it is and how to do it.
Yeah.
I mean, Food, What the Heck Should I Eat is more of an in-depth view. The Peak Diet is sort of like a quick and easy user guide. But essentially, I lay out every single food. How do you choose the right proteins, the right nuts, the right grains, the right kind of form of dairy, the right vegetable? Like what should you be eating, right? And what is the science behind it all? And it's really not that hard. I mean, it's just to eat real food. I mean, because
ideally, if we're eating real food and real healthy food, do we need supplementation, or we do now that our soils are kind of crappy?
We do. I mean, unless we're hunting and gathering our own food and living without any exposure to environmental toxins and breathing clean air and drinking pure clean water and having 9 hours of sleep a night and waking up with the sun and going to bed with the sun and exercising all the time to chase and hunt our food. Well,
we try.
You probably don't need vitamins and minerals. And if you look at the studies on the research on the Paleolithic diet, it was so nutrient dense. 150 grams of fiber, we have 8. It had higher levels of vitamins and minerals and omega-3 fatty acids and higher potassium, lower sodium. I mean, the data is so clear on how nutrient dense that food was. So we just eat an impoverished diet, even if we're eating real food. And the soils are less able to extract the nutrients. But basically, you want to eat lots of colorful fruits and vegetables, lots of nuts and seeds, lots of good fats like olive oil, avocados, and nuts and seeds, lots of high quality protein, about, depending on where you are in your sort of trajectory and what you're doing, anywhere from 0.7 to 1 gram per pound of ideal body weight. So if you're 120 pounds, it's anywhere from 100 to 120 grams of protein a day. Not that hard to do if you pay attention. And cut out all the ultra processed food. Realize that sugar and starch are drugs, and you can use them occasionally if you want, but they're, so you want to have a glass of tequila, shot of tequila once in a while, fine, but you're not going to have 2 or 3 shots every day. It's bad for you. So sugar can be enjoyed as a recreational drug, but not as a staple. and understand that your metabolic health is the most important thing. And so, that is driven by inflammation. So our anti-inflammatory diet is really important. Now, there's degrees of an anti-inflammatory diet. For example, I wrote a book called The 10-Day Detox Diet, which is about getting off of sugar and sugar addiction, but also eliminates all the common foods that drive inflammation. For example, dairy, gluten, sometimes even grains and beans can be factors. So I get rid of all the ultra-processed foods, sugar, dairy, gluten, artificial sweeteners, additives. And it's amazing how much inflammation comes down, like in just 10 days. It's unbelievable. In fact, we're launching a 10-day detox in January for our community online, drhyman.com, and people can go and sign up. And it's unbelievable. We did a beta on it, and I've done this for thousands of people over the years. We see a 70% reduction in all symptoms from all diseases. You have migraines, you have irritable bowel, you have depression, you can't sleep, your joints hurt, you're congested, you have sinus issues, you have asthma, whatever it is, 70% of symptoms, there's a 70% reduction in the symptoms in just 10 days. So that's how powerful food is. And most people have no idea that they're feeling bad. They think it's just normal. It's like the frog in the slowly boiling water. But when you do this 10-day program, you literally reset your entire biology. It's like hitting the reset button, going back to your original factory settings in your body. And then you can see, oh, well, I'm going to add back this, I'm going to add back that. And oh, I add dairy, but like I know if I have cow dairy, I'm going to get stomach issues and I'll get pimples and my nose will congest right away, like within minutes. If I have goat or sheep, it doesn't do it because it has A2 casein. So I know I'm sensitive to A1 casein. So I know that about my body. Now other people might be fine with that, but most people aren't.
I know. I think when you do those, experiments or elimination diets, it's really the number one thing I think it does is you get in tune with your body. You realize, because I think you're on autopilot most of the time. I didn't realize at one point in my 20s, I was drinking quite a bit of wine and I was wondering why my nose was stuffy all the time. I wasn't making that connection.
Yeah, no, honestly, it's so amazing. I practice with so many highly educated people who are interested in their health. And it's stunning to me how rare it is for them to connect what they're eating with how they feel.
Yes.
Like, it's just like,
I also think that I don't know if it's information overload, if people are overwhelmed, if they're too busy, I don't know what it is. It's just, I don't think people want to take that time and make that effort. It feels like too much. Do you feel that way?
No, I think people just don't know. It's overwhelming. People just don't know. What do I do? Who do I listen to? How do I figure this out? I mean, that's why Function is really sort of so great, because it gives people a toolkit.
Yes.
And it gives people a guide on nutrition, on exercise, on stress reduction, on sleep, on avoiding environmental toxins, on how do you address each individual biomarker that's abnormal. How do we're going to be pulling in your medical history, and what are the conditions of how do you optimize your health around that? So it's sort of a coherent, reliable, science-based tool that's not a big kind of bunch of selling something on social media, because the only thing we're selling is access to your own data. We're not selling any of their products. We're not affiliated with any of their products. It's not like take your lab test and buy these supplements, or take your lab test and take these hormones. It's like, no, there's a lot of companies doing that, which I have a problem with. Because then how do you know the integrity of what you're doing? It's like,
that's what's hard
you need to buy this extra product from us because we found all these things, and you need to take these 25 supplements and take these hormones. And I'm like, no, we're not doing that.
Yeah, and I think that's happening so much that we kind of become immune to it. I have red flags that go off because I feel like I'm kind of in that world.
Yeah,
but
who do you trust, right?
Yes,
so
exactly.
we're just providing you guidance, and it's evidence based. It's agnostic. We don't say take this brand or that brand. We say take this many units of vitamin D per day of D3, and make sure when you pick a supplement, you do your homework, and you make sure you look at who the manufacturer is. Do they use good manufacturing practices? Do they use pharmaceutical grade manufacturing practices? Do they third-party test their product before and after they produce the product to make sure there's no contaminants or heavy metals? Do they make sure that the potency is exactly what it says on the label? It says 5,000 units of vitamin D. Is it 5,000 or is it 1,000 or is it 10,000 or 50,000? Do they actually do quality in terms of the other things that are in the product? Are there fillers? Are there additives? Are there preservatives? Are there coloring? Is there gluten? Is there dairy? A lot of supplements have lactose in them or gluten in them, or it's just like crazy. So you don't want all that. So we have a guide on how do you be an educated buyer, right? Yeah. It's like teaching someone to fish rather than giving them a fish.
This episode is brought to you by BetterHelp. Okay, we often hear about red flags we should avoid. Got it. But what if we are focusing more on the green flags in friends and in partners? I don't know about you, but when I was dating intensely, I was looking for the things that were going to piss me off, or the things that just felt ick to me. And the moment I started to look for what I did desire, what I did want, or what was actually really amazing and positive about that person, everything changed. And I was able to do that and make that shift with my therapist. Therapy is incredible for this. Therapy can help you identify green flags, actively practice them in your relationships, and really embody the green flag energy yourself. So whether you're dating or you're married, maybe you're building a new friendship or just working on yourself, it is time to form relationships that really love you back. I can say a lot about therapy, and I will always say it's the best investment I continue to make in myself and will always make in myself. But it has helped me to love myself deeply, and that affects every single relationship I have. So if you've been thinking about starting therapy, try BetterHelp. It is so easy. It's fully online, making therapy affordable and convenient. It serves over 5 million people worldwide. You can access a diverse network of more than 30,000 credentialed therapists with a wide range of specialties, and you can easily switch at any time at no extra cost. They make it super easy. So discover your relationship green flags with BetterHelp. Visit betterhelp.com/almost30 to get 10% off your first month. That's betterhelp.com/almost30. This episode is brought to you by IQ Bar, our exclusive snack sponsor for today's episode. Okay, so let me just walk you through kind of like a morning vibe with IQ Bar. So I start my morning with IQ Joe. So this is a jitter-free coffee. It's great for on the go. It's like single serve packets, natural caffeine, and it also has magnesium and lion's mane. So it really is a balanced coffee. I do not get jitters. Then when I'm on the way to the studio, I've had a lot of interviews lately. I grab an IQ Bar. This is really great for just satiating my hunger. There's no sugar crash, and they're easy to put in my bag. Okay. Very easy. And they taste delicious. They're chewy and moist, and I'm obsessed. Let me just mention some of my favorite IQ Bar flavors. I love the mint chocolate chip. This is a new one, and it just, it tastes like a Girl Scout cookie almost. And then my second favorite right now is the banana nut. It's always been in my top 3, but banana nut is just so yummy. It tastes like banana bread. Love it. And then the IQ Joe, I'm loving the vanilla spice. I don't know about you, but they also have cafe mocha, toasted hazelnut, and just original black. So I cannot do my mornings without IQ Bar most days. So right now, IQ Bar is offering our special podcast listeners, that's you, 20% off all IQ Bar products. Plus, you get free shipping. To get your 20% off, just text almost to 64,000. That's almost. Text almost to 64,000. That's ALMOST to 64000. Message and data rates may apply. See terms for details. Probably one of the top questions I get about the partners we have on this show is, do you really use seed and does it work? Yes, I've been taking seed for, honestly, I think it's like 3.5, 4 years now. I take Seed's DS-01 Daily Symbiotic every day, first thing in the morning. And y'all, I feel great. I am regular. My skin is clear and glowing. I feel like my immune system is as strong as ever. I do not experience bloating. It's just been incredible. So yes, we do actually use and love seed, and I've recommended it to so many people, friends and family. So this is a 2-in-1 probiotic and prebiotic. It's formulated with 24 strains that support your whole body, including reducing bloating, supporting radiant skin, supporting immune system, and strengthening the gut barrier. Our gut is connected to everything. Like, let's not play. We know this now, so we got to do better. The gut-brain connection is real. So if you're experiencing some brain fog or low energy, fatigue, things like that, let's look at your gut as well. So seed has been incredible. And what I love about seed, many things I love, but what's really cool is that the encapsulation is very specific to seed, and it survives the entire journey from being on the shipping truck to being in the bottle on the shelf to coming to your mouth and then down in your digestive tract, getting to where it needs to be. And it is still potent and powerful. Not all probiotics have that. Let's just say that. That's why most don't work. So are you ready to experience a probiotic that actually works? Go to seed.com/almost30 and use the code 25almost to get 25% off your first month. That's 25% off your first month. Great discount. This is for Seed's DS-01 Daily Symbiotic at seed.com/almost30. Code is 25almost. Yeah, the specificity of the test, I think, is so important because, again, we're kind of being fed like, take this supplement, you absolutely need this. And people are like, okay, I'll take it. And then people don't know if it's working because they don't know if they actually need it. What are you seeing as like the top deficiencies
in our testing?
In the testing?
Yeah, it's kind of stunning to me, honestly, because I've done this for a long time, and I think the amount of nutritional deficiencies we have are really stunning. I mean, I was actually talking to Bill Gates the other day at an event I was at, and he was talking about this incredible work they've done around putting vitamins and minerals in bouillon cubes for nutritional deficiencies in the developing world. When I say in Bill, there's a lot of nutritional deficiency in the developed world as well. In America is really bad. He's like, oh, no, there's not. We eat plenty of food and there's plenty of protein and there's lots of, everything's enriched and nobody's got deficiencies. I'm like, no. We've just done 100,000 blood tests. And I can tell you that 67% of Americans are deficient, not at the level that I would think is optimal or that is really optimal based on the science, but what the reference range is in the lab, right? So, for example, the way we determine what a reference range is based on a population. So it's 2 standard deviation from the mean. So it's just normal is just a statistical number. It doesn't mean it's optimal. So if I was a Martian and I landed in America in 2024, I would think it's normal to be overweight because 75% of us are overweight. If you're thin, you're an anomaly. Right, I'm a weirdo because I'm on the way end of the bell curve, right? Because my body mass index is 21 instead of like 25 or 30, right? So, and people, oh, you're scamming out. I'm like, normal. This is normal. I'll give you like, it's like, this is normal.
They're like looking around the airport. They're like, really?
Yeah, and so the reference ranges are based on a sick population. So if everybody's living and working inside and has no exposure to sunlight and slathering themselves with sunscreen, everybody shifted toward vitamin D deficiency. So the reference range for vitamin D is 30. It should be 50.
Wow.
So even based on the reference ranges for a sick population, 67% are deficient. If we expanded that to optimal ranges, which we're going to calculate what that is, I bet it's much more. We're finding the biggest deficiencies are vitamin D, methylation factors like homocysteine, methylmalonic acid. So these are B12 and folate.
Okay.
Iron, magnesium, zinc, omega-3 fatty acids. These are happening at such great rates in the population.
Wow.
And we know this. This is not new information. The government has done something called the National Health and Nutrition Examination Survey. They have a continuous ongoing study for decades. And the government tests large cohorts of people. They check their blood. They do their history. They look at their diet. And their own data show that over 90% of Americans are deficient in one or more nutrients at the minimum level to prevent deficiency. So how much vitamin C do you need to not get scurvy? Not very much, right? So how much vitamin C do you need to optimize your health and immune system? A lot more. Same thing. Okay. So I think, just that data is out there, 80% are deficient in vitamin D or insufficient, 90% are omega-3 deficient, 45% are magnesium deficient, probably about 45% are iron deficient, especially if you're a menstruating woman. It's really common. And so we're missing this whole swath of easily treatable things. And you have to understand, think about scurvy. Like you're going to die from scurvy. Your teeth fall out, you bleed everywhere, your gums are like mad, everything goes terrible. And you take literally like milligrams of something, like just a tiny drop of something cures the disease instantly. Same thing with like pellagra or beriberi, which are diseases of B vitamins, which they found when they started refining grains, they started seeing these really increasing rates of these horrible diseases that cause terrible skin rashes and dementia and all these horrible things, like serious illnesses. And literally you give people tiny milligrams of something and a miracle happens. It's gone in literally days.
Wow.
Like that's how
amazing.
Well, but drugs don't do that, right?
Right.
Drugs manage disease. They don't get rid of it. Yeah. And so nutrients are the hub of your entire biochemistry, because every single chemical reaction, there are 37 billion trillion chemical reactions in your body every second.
Billion trillion.
I don't even know what that is.
Yeah,
I think it's 30.
Like, whoa.
I think it's like 37 zeros.
That is great.
And every single one of those chemical reactions requires an enzyme, and every enzyme requires a cofactor or helper.
Okay.
Those are vitamins and minerals. And each mineral or vitamin can influence hundreds and hundreds of chemical reactions. So if you're low in something, your basic biochemistry isn't working, which then leads to chronic illness over time. These are called long latency deficiency diseases because, 10% of Americans don't get enough vitamin C that gives them scurvy still today, right?
Wow.
But most people don't have scurvy, but they have other things that are related to lower levels or folate. Maybe like the woman I saw today, she had insufficiency of folate. Maybe it's not going to cause what we call an acute deficiency, which causes anemia with large red cells. Maybe it's going to cause cancer because she doesn't have folate, or going to cause heart disease or cause dementia because her level of homocysteine was almost 14. If your homocysteine, which is a measure of your B vitamins, was high, we test this in Function Health. If it's over 14, your risk of dementia is up by 50%.
What?
And all it requires is taking certain B vitamins in certain forms to fix it. Now, when you go to your doctor, say, oh, just take folic acid. Well, no, that's not the right form. You're going to make it worse. You take a methylated folate or methylfolate. And so we explain why and how the biochemistry works. 1/3 of your entire DNA codes for enzymes. Think about it. 1/3 of your entire DNA codes for enzymes. All those enzymes need vitamins and minerals, and different enzymes and variations in those enzymes may require you to have more of a certain nutrient. For example, we test genetics, including the gene that is involved in this really key biochemical process called methylation, or it's called MTHFR. About 35% of the population has a variant of this gene that makes it difficult for them to methylate folate, which means their biochemistry doesn't work right. And so you need to take this extra special forms of folate. And I just say a quick story about this. And it's before Function, but there was a woman that was a director of a movie called Fed Up that I was in. It was about childhood obesity. It was, I think, 10 years ago.
Yeah.
And the sad thing was she had miscarriage after miscarriage after miscarriage. And then she had, a baby born with anencephaly, which is no brain. It's terrible. Wow. I mean, it was just horrible. And so she read this article I wrote about methylation, which is kind of esoteric. And it's about how this is such a key biochemical process. And so many of us have problems with it. And in there, I explained, what to test for. You check for homocysteine, you adjust the gene, you do this, how it can cause miscarriages, how it can cause spinal birth defects, which she had the anencephaly. And she read this thing and she went to her doctor and she said, "Doctor, I want you to test me for this gene." And he tested her, and sure enough, she had the gene that. And then
the methylfolate she was taking.
Yeah, she wasn't taking any, and so she was taking just a prenatal vitamin that didn't have the right folate. It didn't work. Okay. So then she said to her doctor, he says, "Oh yeah, I want you to take more folic acid." She's like, "No, Dr. Hyman, in this article said I need to take this full methylfolate," and so she took it. And ended up during the movie premiere, she had a baby. It was 10 months old. And we were like driving around New York City, going to different media events. And she was like breastfeeding in the back of the car. And she had this beautiful, healthy baby just simply by taking the right form of a nutrient. That's how powerful these are. And like I'm just going to say again, 67% of our health forward cohort at Function Health have something. Yeah. And if you expand the definition to optimal, it's probably like 90%.
Wow.
So you got to know this stuff. And your doctor's not checking your omega-3 fats, not checking your vitamin D, not checking your red cell magnesium, not checking your homocysteine, not checking your methylmalonic acid, not checking your zinc level, not checking all the things that really matter to know what's going on with your biology.
When we talk about movement, exercise, I feel like there's differing information around how much we need, what do we need, minimally, optimally, etc. I guess if we're talking to, the person out there listening has like not even an hour to move their bodies, how are you thinking about movement? Not just exercise. Maybe it's, choices to walk places during the day. How do you talk to your patients about movement?
I mean, listen, any little bit matters, right? Yeah. So just getting up and doing jumping jacks for 30 seconds can be a lot, taking a 5-minute walk, if that's all you can do, I mean, we just went to an event. I just walked 15 minutes back to the apartment rather than taking a taxi, I worked out this morning. I had, 25 minutes before I could go. And I had a workout routine that I do with bands. So all I need is my body weight and bands. And I can do a quick routine and travel with it. And it's just learning the basic skills. Like, people have to learn how to cook. They have to learn how to activate their parasympathetic system and relax their nervous system, which is overactivated with stress. People have to learn how to move their bodies in ways that support their health. It doesn't have to be a lot of time. Give me
Yeah.
30 minutes, 3 or 4 times a week at minimum, not that much. Talk about 90 minutes a week. I mean, if you can't find that time, you should re-examine your life, because it's
Completely.
yeah, and it's the problem is though. Here's what happens for most people is they're eating a crappy diet. They feel like crap.
Yeah.
They don't want to move. And what's interesting, and this is very interesting, it's very interesting biology. David Ludwig has really mapped a lot of this out from Harvard. He basically said, we have a fuel partitioning problem. So what happens is you're eating all this food. It gets pushed into your belly fat. It's locked in there. Your body thinks you're starving. So what does it do? One, it makes you eat more. And two, it makes you exercise less. Because your body thinks you're starving. You want to conserve energy. So you're not going to want to exercise. Right? So basically what he's saying is it's not overeating that makes you gain weight. It's this sort of starting of this belly fat that causes the overeating.
Okay.
It's hungry fat. So if you look down and you got belly fat, you don't have it. You don't have it. I don't have it. But like a lot of people have it. It's like 93% have it. If you have that belly fat, visceral fat, organ fat, that's different than fat on your butt or your legs or your arms.
Sure.
And that fat, one, makes you hungry, and two, makes you lazy. So it's not eating too much and exercising not enough that makes us gain weight. It's actually having this belly fat that starts with too much sugar that makes us eat more and not exercise.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for that. I notice on days, even when I have like a little indulging session, I'm like, man, oh man, I thought I was going to have that.
I'm not going to work out, but I'm not going to.
Exactly. So I think
I'm going to
just
skip it today. I'm going to
aware.
skip it today. I'm going to watch more.
I was literally thinking about you this morning. I was like, I wonder if Mark got up and worked. I was with my son who woke up at the crack of dawn. I was like, I'm sure he did. Last question. I was just also thinking about you when we were at this event. I know your schedule is so packed and traveling and the like. I'm curious how you stay well. What are your non-negotiables? What are you bringing with you when you travel?
Yeah. So basically my routine is, I bring my bands. So I have like a, stretchy resistance bands. It's about this big, takes up like maybe a pound or less.
Yep.
All I need is a door with a doorknob and a floor. And I don't even need anything else. I don't need shoes. I can do it in my underwear in my hotel room.
Great.
It does. And I have a set of routines. TB12 has a great app which you can follow.
Awesome.
And I use that personally. There's so much on YouTube. You can just like do body weight resistance exercise. Give me a 30-minute routine and pop. I mean, it's great to have access to all this stuff now. So there's also apps. There's no lack of guidance on how to do it. So that's non-negotiable. Getting 8 hours sleep is pretty non-negotiable, although sometimes it's 7.
Okay.
So last night I went to bed, and I got at 11. I got up at 6:30. So I had about 7 hours sleep. I like 8, but I'm okay on 7. And I, got a little work done in the morning, worked out, and then went to the event. So I work out and I make sure that I get my food sorted. So I'm very careful about making sure I have usually a day's worth of food with me, kind of like a squirrel,
Yeah, totally.
I have my bags full of nuts. So I basically have nuts and proteins. You can have
what nuts are you eating right now?
I eat macadamia nuts, which are the highest caloric density and highest fat, and they're like the olive oil of nuts. Cool. So they're really great. And you eat a bag of that and you're like, that's good. If you're hungry, you don't get hungry. And then you have, in a food emergency, you need to eat crap and just eat a donut or whatever's around. Right.
Right.
So make sure I have that. Make sure I have venison sticks. So Maui Nui makes these great venison sticks. Okay. So there's lots of stuff that's protein and fat and fiber. Mm-hmm. And then, I take my vitamins. So I have little packed baggies like this, and I fill them, for my trip, whatever is my trip, is a week, 2 weeks, I fill up the whole time worth, and I make sure I take those. So I don't know if you noticed, but I was at the event, I had my little baggie, and I had my food, and then I take my vitamins. And then, what I'm going to do, because if I go on longer trips, and one thing I miss is my protein shake in the morning. So I bought like a portable little hand blender.
Cool.
And
Okay.
then I'm going to have little baggies, and I put my protein powders and all the goodies I like to put in there.
Yeah.
And I'm going to take that with me. That's my new plan.
That's a genius move.
And then I'm going to take like dried berries. You can get like, I think it's Northeast Wild something. I forget the name of the company, but it's basically they provide like, frozen berries that are wild, but they also have like the powdered dried stuff. You can put that in.
Okay, great.
So yeah, so there's all little hacks you can do.
Yeah, of course. Because I just can't imagine. I think a lot of people, when they're very, very busy, everything else falls to the wayside.
Yeah.
So this is great.
It's not as good as when I'm home. I get my
Of
sauna,
course.
my cold plunge. I got all my
Say
stuff.
no
But
more.
but
I was thinking about
yeah,
I
yeah.
was like, what does Mark have in his
But
house?
right after this, I'm going to the Russian bathhouse for a sauna.
Good. Okay, good.
So
You
I got to
deserve it.
squeeze it in before the next event. So I got to and hang out with a friend that I haven't
Great.
seen, and just take an hour to myself. And
How much more time do those choices give you, right? Like you just feel so much better.
Yeah, for sure.
You can be so much more present. So
yeah, exactly.
I'm so thankful. Thank you for being here. This was phenomenal. Congratulations just on Function Health thus far. And I know it's going to just make a huge impact on health in our country and globally.
Yeah.
So I'm excited for our community.
And there's some good news for your community.
To test.
We have a 400,000 people wait list.
Yeah.
But those
and guess what?
The first 100 people to sign up on functionhealth.com can use the code almost30 and skip the 400,000 person wait list. So
do it now.
A little gift to you.
Yeah, that's going to be gone in 2 seconds. I just did my testing, so I'm excited to share about my results with you all in a couple weeks.
Yeah. So almost 30 is the early access code, functionhealth.com. And you won't be sorry.
You will not be sorry. Thank you so much, Mark.
Thank you.
Right, y'all.
Thanks.
We'll see you on the next one. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you all so much for listening to this episode with Dr. Mark Hyman. You can find him on Instagram at Dr. Mark Hyman. And the first 100 people to use the code almost30 at functionhealth.com will get early access to Function. It's an incredible platform that supports you extensively and thoughtfully in taking ownership of your health. You will be able to get over 100 biomarkers. What? I was blown away, and I'm so excited to continue my journey with them. So again, that's functionhealth.com. Code is almost 30, the first 100 people. Thank you so much for listening. We appreciate you as always. We know there's a lot of pods out there. So the fact that you have come back to almost 30, that you've subscribed to almost 30, that you've shared this with friends means the world to us. And just a reminder, Kristen and I have written a book. It's coming out in June, and it would mean so much to us if you would pre-order our book. I know it's 6 months away. Why would you pre-order a book? No, this is important. This is really important. It's going to be on your doorstep and be sent out the day it launches. And it would just mean the world to us. We're very, very, very proud and excited to share this work with you. This is a guide to help you transition from your 20s to your 30s and really navigate any season of change. It's called Almost 30, the definitive guide to a life you love for the next decade and beyond. And we're really proud. So thank you again. You can go to almost 30 to learn more. You can follow us on Instagram at almost 30 podcast, same on TikTok. And we'll see you on the next one. Thanks so much, y'all. See ya.